The sonar screen pulsed once, then again a sharper echo this time. On board the Norwegian research vessel Helmer Hansen, a technician leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "We have a target, 50 meters ahead." His voice crackled through the radio, but no one on deck was breathing. From 3,000 meters below, the North Atlantic had just whispered something back. A ghost.
"We do have a target in front of us, about 50 meters dead ahead. Looks interesting on sonar."
On the screen, the shape was impossible to mistake. A long, narrow cylinder, battered but intact. It looked manufactured, cold, predatory. The crew stared at the outline in silence as the confirmation came in. It was the B-37, a Soviet Foxtrot-class submarine that had vanished without a trace in 1972. For a few seconds, there was celebration. They'd found what history had long buried. But then, just beyond the wreck, another shape appeared, a second anomaly. Larger, dense, clustered, unfamiliar. It wasn't part of the sub, and it wasn't supposed to be there. The Helmer Hansen drifted in the frigid waters off the Svalbard archipelago, a scattering of glacial islands clawing at the Arctic sky. This wasn't just another patch of ocean. It was one of the last true frontiers, where sunlight barely reaches, where currents move like ancient machinery, and where nations now silently battle for control beneath the ice. Down here, 10,500 feet below, the world is pitch black. The pressure crushes metal. The cold steals time, and yet, here in this abyss, the ocean had preserved a secret for more than 50 years. The Soviet submarine B-37 was thought lost during a routine patrol in 1972. Moscow claimed a battery fire had taken her and all 78 souls aboard. It was tragic, but clean, self-contained, buried by time and ice. For decades, no one questioned it. But this sonar scan, this discovery shattered that illusion. Because the ocean floor didn't just give up the sub, it revealed something else, something close, something heavy, and something built. To naval historians, it's a breakthrough. To intelligence analysts, it's a bombshell. Because finding a Soviet war grave is one thing, but finding what may be an undisclosed structure, weapon system, or second vessel beside it, that's a diplomatic powder keg in the middle of a geopolitical chessboard, and nobody's ready for what comes next. What should have been a simple explanation, a submarine lost to an internal malfunction, began unraveling the moment the deeper scans came in. The hull of the B-37 was crushed inward, its bow folded like paper from the brutal pressure of the deep. That alone hinted at a catastrophic implosion, the kind that ends a crew's life in milliseconds. But the pattern of destruction didn't match a routine battery fire. It was too violent, too sudden, too clean. And then came the real problem. 500 meters away, far beyond where any normal debris field should lie, the sonar caught a separate metallic cluster. Dense, organized, heavy enough that currents couldn't have dragged it there. Structures like cylinders and rigid frames, the kind of shapes nature doesn't produce. It looked less like wreckage, more like cargo, or equipment, or another vessel entirely. That changed everything. Because the B-37 wasn't supposed to be carrying anything externally, it wasn't supposed to be towing anything, and it certainly wasn't supposed to have another craft shadowing it beneath the Arctic ice. The crew of the Helmer Hansen replayed the scans again and again, looking for a mistake, but every frame tightened the knot. This wasn't an accident scene. It was a story that didn't match its ending, and behind that story were 78 men. Sons, brothers, husbands, who vanished without a single piece of floating debris, without a distress call, without even an emergency buoy breaking the surface. The families were told they died quickly. But the ocean was now telling a different version, one where something else happened out there, something the official reports never accounted for, something that left a second metal giant resting in the dark. And that unanswered presence on the seabed was about to pull the entire Cold War narrative into question. The Helmer Hansen had the best sonar technology Norway could buy. Kongsberg EM710, multi-beam arrays that carved the ocean floor into 3D images. But even with that power, they couldn't answer the one question everyone on board was asking: what was that second shape? They tried. Technicians boosted the frequency to 200 kilohertz. Analysts pored over every detail, matching contour lines and comparing object densities. And when the sonar sweep widened, the anomaly didn't fade. It sharpened. It was denser than the sub, more compact, and it didn't follow any known debris pattern. Normally, a submarine sinks in chaos. Light debris floats, heavier pieces fall close to the hull. But this object wasn't part of that chaos. It was too far, too organized, too intentional. They wanted to send a camera down, badly. But the Arctic had other plans. Winter ice was moving fast, dragging massive flows south. The currents below were too aggressive for the ship's remotely operated vehicles. The risk of losing equipment or worse, getting trapped was growing by the hour. So they waited. And above them, political pressure began to tighten, because by then, NATO command had already seen the scans. And behind closed doors, whispers began spreading. This wasn't just a lost submarine. This was an operation that went wrong. A Soviet mission buried by ice and silence. And that thing, 500 meters away, it might be the reason no one came back. When the Helmer-Hansen team ran the density scans again, something snapped into focus. A shape they'd overlooked. It wasn't just a metal blob buried in sediment, it was structured, stacked, cylindrical. It looked assembled. No natural formation, no accidental debris pile behaves like that. The scans revealed right angles, parallel tubes, uniform reflections from the sonar pulse, like canisters or storage tanks. Or, according to one naval intelligence officer, missile containers. But Foxtrot-class subs weren't designed for that. The B-37 was a torpedo boat, fast, quiet, and armed, but never for delivery. Not for carrying anything externally, and certainly not for transporting advanced weapons. So what was it doing with something this size, this heavy? There were no Soviet records of a second vessel lost in the area, no documented resupply run, no known dumping ground. And yet this mass, resting quietly 500 meters from the sub's crushed hull, was behaving like it had always been there. Like it had never been meant to be found. It wasn't just out of place, it was out of history. And for the first time, analysts began whispering the possibility that made even seasoned Cold War veterans shift in their seats. The B-37 wasn't just lost, it was silenced. The implications moved fast, and they were dangerous. Because if the B-37 had been carrying unauthorized cargo, or worse, towing a classified vessel, then its discovery wasn't just a historical event, it was a live wire across a Cold War that never truly ended. NATO intelligence classified the raw sonar files within hours. The public release was scrubbed, cleaned up, redacted, but insiders began leaking fragments. Whispers of high-density alloy clusters, formation patterns resembling military logistics, possibly even containers resembling Soviet SS-N-15 missile casings. But that couldn't be right. The B-37 was built in the early 60s. It wasn't equipped for modern payloads, it would have needed a full refit, and there's no evidence in the logs of that ever happening. So either the logs were doctored, or the sub had been converted off the books. Suddenly, what was once thought a routine patrol looked more like a covert operation. A shadow mission, one erased from official Soviet archives, leaving behind nothing but silence and grief. And the silence, it was everywhere. No emergency buoy, no debris floating to the surface, no funeral for the families, just decades of classified reports, blacked out logs, and a wreck that now suggested a second player had been involved. Because here's the part that rattled even the hardened analysts. The anomaly didn't scatter like loose cargo. It was too heavy, too contained. It landed deliberately, as if it had been ejected, or had separated, or had tried to escape. And that means the crew may not have died instantly. They may have fought to save the vessel. Or worse, they may have fought to protect something they weren't supposed to have. Experts scrambled to explain it. The first theory came from structural engineers. Maybe the anomaly was just part of the sub, a detached stern or a torn control section sheared off during implosion. But the hydrodynamics didn't match. At that depth, heavy parts sink fast and close. This thing was 500 meters away. That's not drift, that's distance. That's movement before destruction. Then came the cargo theory. Some believe the B-37 had been modified to carry external canisters, hydrodynamic pods strapped to the hull used during covert missions to resupply Arctic outposts or deliver commando units. The Soviets had done this before, but never with this class of submarine, and never this deep into contested waters. If this was a supply run, it was never meant to be seen. Another theory points to experimental signals intelligence. Declassified records now suggest the B-37 may have been equipped with prototype listening gear, massive power-hungry sensors designed to monitor NATO fleets from beneath the ice. Some of that equipment required trailing antennas or towable sonar sleds. If one of those devices malfunctioned, snagged, or exploded, it could have brought the entire vessel down with it. But even those theories feel too clean. Because the sonar doesn't show loose equipment, it shows structure. And that's when the darker ideas start to surface. Some researchers have pointed out that the scanned cylinders look eerily similar to Soviet nuclear waste containers, the kind once dumped into the Barents and Kara Seas illegally, recklessly. If the B-37 was tasked with moving radioactive material and something went wrong, the consequences would have been deadly. Exposure, poisoning, panic. A mission like that would have never been admitted publicly. It would explain the silence, the sealed logs, the families left without answers. But not everyone thinks it was Soviet tech at all. One theory, quietly circulated among NATO analysts, proposes that the B-37 collided with a second vessel, a smaller sub, possibly one it was towing, or one it didn't see coming. During the Cold War, American and Soviet subs played a deadly game of underwater chicken. Hull-to-hull collisions happened. Some were never reported. If the B-37 was acting as a mothership, carrying a small spy sub like the Soviet Triton units, and something went wrong during deployment, both could have been lost together. The B-37's final maneuver, caught in sonar traces, shows the sub turning, not fleeing, as if it saw something, and moved toward it. And then, there's the wild theory, the one that gets everyone quiet. The Soviet Navy had a name for it, the Quackers. Strange acoustic signals reported by dozens of submariners moving at impossible speeds. Duck-like chirps circling subs, taunting crews, then vanishing. They were never captured on Western equipment. Some believed they were NATO drones. Others whispered about unidentified submersible objects, craft moving silently beneath the Arctic shelf, faster than any known technology. If the B-37 encountered one of these anomalies, something it couldn't outrun, couldn't identify, and couldn't report, it would explain everything. The silence, the implosion, the second shape on the seafloor, and the enduring fear that whatever it was might still be down there. Beneath 10,000 feet of freezing darkness, the B-37 rests upright, perfectly still, not crumpled, not scattered, almost deliberate. Sonar revealed no debris halo, no panic ejects, no emergency buoy, nothing, just the bow, crushed inward, and 500 meters away that other presence, cold, dense, unyielding. For years, the Soviet families were told their sons were on extended duty. Some were told nothing at all. There were no bodies, no graves, no closure, just silence. And now that silence has been broken, not by words, but by sound. The mechanical echo of sonar pinging against a shape that should not exist. Captain Viktor Kovalenko never got a funeral. His 78 crewmen never got their names etched in stone, but they died serving a mission no one will speak about. One that involved something so classified, so volatile, so terrifying that it was buried not just underwater but under history itself. And now, it's beginning to surface. The ocean is a graveyard, but it remembers everything. And the metal bones of the Cold War are starting to speak. Let us know your thoughts below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dive investigations like this.